Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and these are my thoughts on The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, time for some more thoughts, this time on some science fiction horror. This is part of my science fiction for the somewhat less hesitant reading project. Spoiler warning before we get going with this, I'm not going to be discussing any major plot points or anything like that. A couple of minor bits, minor spoilers potentially. So if you've not read the book and you want to go in completely blind, then do feel free to click away from this video now and come back when we're done. But as I say, I won't be spoiling anything major. So The Luminous Dead then. This follows a character, or two characters basically. This is a two-hander. The first of which is a woman called Jaya Price, who is a caver, who's employed to undertake a dangerous solo expedition through a massive cave system on her home planet. It's a planet that's very different to Earth. She lives on a distant planet. She lies about her experience and job history to get this job because it's very high paid and she's trying to get off planet. But lying about that kind of thing probably isn't the best idea when you're going to be spending like weeks on your own in a very strange specialized caving suit, mapping really deep caves that also are partially underwater, that are home to potentially toxic fungi and things like that, as well as strange alien creatures known as tunnelers. Jaya is monitored by her handler, M, who is a somewhat difficult character, who is in charge of ensuring Jaya's safety, largely through kind of the control of this very specialised suit that Jaya's in. And so as Jaya navigates through these claustrophobic tunnels and caves, the relationship between M and Jaya becomes very tense as M kind of tries to exert control over Jaya's bodily autonomy. And Jaya has to confront both physical dangers down there of the cave as well as her own kind of psychological issues, emotional turmoil, and ends up facing a desperate fight for survival. So there's your synopsis. So what did I think of this one then? I should be the prime target audience for this kind of thing. I love science fiction, I love horror, I love anything to do with like expeditions, especially in like, you know, extreme environments like caves, things like that. And I was really looking forward to this one, but unfortunately I found this really disappointing. I didn't like this much at all. I'll say that now, in case you kind of like, right, okay, he's done, before I get into why I didn't. So yeah, this is essentially, as I say, this is essentially a two-hander. So you kind of want the pair to be interesting, engaging. You know, I don't need them to be likable to make it enjoyable. I just need them to be interesting and engaging and believable. But unfortunately for me, they were just irritating. Jaya particularly. Yeah, neither of them were particularly believable. As I say, Jaya is annoyingly recalcitrant and reckless, and continually does really stupid things that put her own safety at risk, which would be fine if that was kind of like her starting point, and then there was some sort of kind of, you know, change to that kind of attitude, etc. throughout. But she never learns, and so the narrative kind of quite quickly for me became this kind of repetitive cycle of kind of minor variations on the same bloody mistakes, followed by the same kind of tired arguments, blaming, moaning from Jaya about M, and then arguments between the two characters. Then, and this is a minor spoiler, there's a relationship that begins to sort of form between M and Jaya, which I was kind of like, seriously? It's like, for Jaya particularly, it's like she seems to hate M 1 minute and is calling her a monster, and you know, M is quite monstrous in places, in terms of some of the things she does. And yeah, Jaya's, you know, kind of really going at her and like calling her all these things. And then the next minute she's like, oh, I think I might fancy her. And I'm like, really? And then it's backwards and forwards, hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And yeah, I was just like, yeah, no, that's not convincing to me. It's not written in a convincing way. I'm not saying that, you know, you can go from like enemies, you can't go from enemies to lovers in a story. Not that I particularly like that trope, but you can do it, and you can do it effectively and believably. But this wasn't for me. There was some good stuff in here with regards to the atmosphere. I'll give it that much. There was some creepy stuff. There was some really eerie sort of atmospheric sections. A lot of claustrophobia. I did appreciate that. I think elements of the kind of the design, if you like, of the cave system were really interesting, but they were also quite confusing. The description of it was not. For me, it wasn't enough to really give me a good solid picture of what it looked like. And I mean, you know, the kind of the fact that the cave inside, you know, kind of looks, a lot of different parts look similar. Well, yeah, it's a cave. It's going to look similar in a lot of respects. And so the confusion, the kind of the disorientation, that I get, yeah, that's a good thing. But just in terms of being able to properly picture what's going on and what Jaya's seeing, etc., it didn't quite nail it for me, that. But yeah, it didn't make it easy for me to map out kind of in my head what was happening. It all felt very samey, as I say, and yeah, caves are probably very samey inside, but it just made it feel somewhat repetitive. And I think that's one of my main gripes with this book overall, is there's too much repetition of various different things, and it becomes exhausting. The writing is kind of, it's straightforward in the most part. It's accessible in terms of its language use and things like that. It's not trying to, you know, kind of, it's not trying to be really purple or anything like that, and it's not trying to be overly clever. It's fine. The sciencey sides of it are just kind of, they're enough to kind of give it a good sort of scientific flavour, but it's not hard science by any stretch of the imagination. My main issue with it is that it is way too melodramatic. It felt very one note in a lot of respects. There is so much flipping drama. Everything's drama in there, and it's like, again, it's another reason why I think I found the characters quite unconvincing. It's overly dramatic, I think. It's also way too long, I think, for me. It felt overwritten. It was just under 15 hours on the audio, or the text is 414 pages. I think this could have made a brilliant novella, or even a tighter, shorter novel. But as I say, it just went round and round and on and on. There's too much stuff packed in there, and there's too much repetition. And the tunnelers, the alien beasties that live in the cave and were kind of, you know, pose a constant underlying threat throughout. These things were a great idea, but in practice, they weren't. I think they were underused for most of the book. It took way too long to get to their reveal of what these things actually are, what they look like, what they're doing, etc. And then when we finally got there, it was just underwhelming. So again, it's like it was a missed trick. I think you could have like got rid of a load of the kind of the superfluous, what I think is of the superfluous stuff in it. Brought some more in, you know, more action, more kind of excitement in. Vary it, you know, vary the pace, vary the tone, etc. on it with the tunnelers and some other stuff like that, and it would have been, you know, so much better in terms of keeping me engaged. So yeah, it was like its pacing was it felt very slow. Whether it was or not, I don't know. It felt very slow. I really like the concept of this, so that's why I say it's disappointing, because I really I went into this kind of thinking, oh, this sounds great, and I do really like the concept, and there are some great ideas in it, as I say, like the tunnelers, like the idea of being, you know, in this very specialized suit that someone else can control. You know, Jaya's got, you know, she's had to have an operation, so she's fitted with like a feeding tube into her stomach. She can be injected with various different medications, sedatives, etc., that kind of thing. she's trapped in this suit as well. She can't touch her own face or hair or anything else like that. She's kind of sealed into it. You know, all of that kind of stuff. And then, you know, the actual dangers within the cave itself, the massive walls you've got to climb down, the underwater sections you've got to actually dive through, and all the various different kind of issues with that. Plus you've got an extra unknown, you've got the tunnels, and then you've got another extra unknown kind of like threat going on as well, psychological, that plays into some psychological horror. That stuff was great. Yeah, as I say, the psychological horror elements, the questioning of what's real and things like that, that all should have made for a really, really good, tense, engaging piece of writing. But those ideas for me just got lost in a bloated and repetitive plot, and within these kind of irritating and unconvincing characters. So it just didn't work for me at all. So yeah, I can't even say I enjoyed this. Can you tell? There are a few sections in it where it ramped up a bit, and I enjoyed, you know, some actual good bits of tension and claustrophobia. But on the whole, it was just a slog, unfortunately, for me. As I said, that's why I'm kind of saying it was disappointing again, because there are sections in there are bits in there I'm like, yes, this is what I'm here for. This is great. This is good writing, evoking tension. You know, the characters are coming across well. But yeah, it was too little, unfortunately, in a sea of other stuff that I just really did not get on with. So a rating for this one then, I think it's going to go on Storygraph at a 2-star, maybe a 2.5 star, because I can recognise that there is some good stuff in here. The idea was great, that there are moments of some really good, tense, engaging, fun writing in there. It's just not enough of it for me overall to be able to kind of recommend this one. Yeah, I would say it's a great concept with some effective building of atmosphere and tension, but it's overly long and overly dramatic and overly repetitive. But you win some and you lose some. I'm never going to like everything. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on The Luminous Dead. So that will do from me today. Thank you very much for watching, folks, as always. Do drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if you've read The Luminous Dead and what you thought of it. Did you have a similar experience to me, or is it one of your favourites? Yeah, do let me know. I always like to hear from lots of different opinions on stuff that I've read. I'll be back on Sunday with another little review, my thoughts on Hampton Heights by Dan Coys. Spoiler, I had more success with that one than I did with The Luminous Dead. But I do hope you'll join me for that then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.